Welcome into the PHNX Cardinals podcast, presented to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's top-rated sportsbook. Be sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star wherever you get your podcast. Johnny Venerable, Bo Brock from the PHNX headquarters in downtown Phoenix. And well, it's like Christmas every day. The team flames out. Every day we've got a new piece of news, and this is a big one, Bo. This is the one we've been waiting for.
No doubt about it. You've been waiting to ask that special someone to prom. You did it. You figured out the best way to do it. Now you just need him to say yes, right? Because you got permission. You got permission to do it. Maybe you're asking somebody to marry you. You get the permission from the father. You're golden. All you have to do is figure out the best way to do it. Don't screw things up. And that's where Michael Bidwill and the Arizona Cardinals are with Sean Payton. According to multiple reports, including Tom Pelissero of NFL Network, that to our audio-only listeners, the Arizona Cardinals, this is actually from Rap Sheet, received permission to speak with Saints coach Sean Payton. Sources say as they plot out their coaching search, one of more coveted coaches available, Payton also has an interview looming with the Broncos. And then after the Cardinals news, we found out that the Texans also received permission.
Lame.
But as far as locking in interviews, we haven't heard anything as of now as we record this podcast. But the Cardinals, they have permission to talk to the Saints. Maybe like with the Broncos earlier this week, they'll start to maybe create the framework on what it would cost compensation-wise with Payton being under contract through 2024. But look, this is what we've been waiting for. This is what we've been anticipating. This is why Michael Bidwill, when I asked him in the press conference a couple days ago with a wry smile, when I said, do you anticipate reaching out to the Saints about Sean Payton? He said, I can't give you any details on that, but he was smiling ear to ear.
This is his face he was making. Emma, if we could play the clip from the other day from my counterpart here. He did God's work.
I'm not going to get into details of any of the candidates we're reaching out to, other than to acknowledge that I've done the 2 interviews with one with Adrian, one with Quentin.
Get someone that looks at you the same way Michael Bidwill looked at me when declining the comment on Sean Payton.
That's like me looking at the Maricopa Dunkin' Donuts, right? When I pull in and get my iced coffee, and I'm like, we got a real business here. That's Michael Bidwill talking to my guy, Bo Brock, at the Monday press conference. You love to see it. You knew it was coming because I think there were some people that had some doubt, like the Cardinals. They're going to flub this up. They're going to hire Vance Joseph, right? They're not going to talk to Sean Payton. He doesn't want to talk. Bull fucking shit. They weren't going to talk to Sean Payton.
Right.
You don't fire everybody and then say, okay, we've done some internal interviews, but we're casting a large net. Know that other teams, competent franchises, our friends at DMVR, the Denver Broncos, now Houston, are going to go out and pursue Sean Payton. This is the most, I would say, watered down of NFL teams that are available for a head coaching vacancy in some time. 10 openings last year, 5 right now. It could be 6 with McVay. Yeah. Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe, LA, hopefully not, fires their coach this Saturday, this Sunday if they lose to Jacksonville. But you have a prime pouncing opportunity. You have to make him believe, make him say no to you, give him all the monies, all the power, because we also got a note today. I think that was from Dan Graziano and Jeremy Fowler, Bo, on ESPN, ESPN.com, basically stating that they're going to reach out. This wasn't officially official yet. And when and if they do, Sean Payton is going to get personnel power, personnel say. Of course he can. Let him pick his GM. If he wants Adrian Wilson, if he likes Quentin Harris, I don't care if he hires those guys because he's going to have the overall hierarchy of say. It's like Kyle Shanahan. You think John Lynch has trump card over Kyle Shanahan? Hell no. That's exactly like the formality that's going on here. We talked about Mike Vrabel, right, is going to be the King Tut in Tennessee now that John Robinson's gone. You get a coach that's won championships, that goes to Super Bowls. They get first pick like Pete Carroll, overarching over John Schneider in Seattle. This is the norm. If you want a blue chip head coaching prospect, you have to give them personnel control. I have no problem with it.
Right. And I think that's why people were hesitant when they heard Michael Bidwill say, hey, we want to get the GM spot figured out before we figure out the head coach spot. And they're like, whoa, hey, you got that ace up your sleeve. Let's not ruin that. Let's be able to play that when the flop comes out. Let's try to figure out, how the best way to maneuver this. And Michael Bidwill, because he's been leaning on people around the league and people he trusts, he had a plan in place. And it seems like, it's the plan is going as he wants it to. And the Arizona Cardinals, I mean, talk about casting a net. I'm not someone who would advocate for fishing for whales, but they could catch a fucking whale as far as Sean Payton. The biggest fish out there, even though it's a mammal, it's not even a fish. I guess a shark would be the correct analogy for catching the biggest fish.
Maybe a nice sea bass.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not
Nice
a
tuna.
fishing aficionado. Yeah. Pete is going to come after us now. Yeah. You go and you get a fucking harpoon and you go for that sea monster and you don't come back empty handed. And I'm not going to sit here and compare, you know, Vance Joseph to a little baby trout. Right. But I just, that is hanging out there. That rumor that the Cardinals are going to strongly consider Vance Joseph. Like, if this is the biggest PR play from Michael Bidwell, everybody's going to be gutted. If he goes out there, says all the right things, does all the right things, mind you, in letting go of Cliff Kingsbury, saying goodbye to Steve Keim. That's why I believe actions speak louder than words, and we have to believe him on his actions thus far. I believe that he's going to go out and he's going to try to get Sean Payton, and I believe he's going to go out and he's going to hire a competent external GM. So that's why I can't entertain the Vance Joseph stuff. I just can't. He's been around, and they're terrible defensively, Bo.
Yeah, I'm with you. When Johnny's dropping F-bombs, it's good for the show. It's good for everybody.
I try to be appropriate. My kids are out here, you know. Keep it down.
Yeah,
it's nothing they haven't heard before.
Sly, who's been in the chat, even after the Cardinals' 11-win season last year, all off season, he was advocating for Harbaugh, so he's asking for a nice Harbass to be caught in that in that wide net. But yeah, I mean, Mikey's saying Bidwell trying to reel in a huge tune. You guys just killing it in the chat just for giggles. Payton is worth whatever he wants, and I think that's what we're getting to. Now it's just like help him secure the bag. I mean, and don't fumble this Bidwell. But it seems like, as we've talked about all week, and we're going to talk about with Kyle Odegaard, it feels like Michael Bidwell, after dropping some baggage as far as this organization goes, is starting to get his groove back, right?
Yeah.
He got his nails did, his hair did. He's feeling good. He's walking tall. He's strutting down downtown Phoenix and feeling like he's the man. He's getting it back. He's the owner of one of 32 NFL franchises, and he's acting like it because he's got deep pockets. And with those, in a franchise quarterback and obviously a destination city in Phoenix, he's got an appealing team right now with only really, as it stands right now, 4 competitors vying for Sean Payton to be their next head coach.
I'll make a promise right now. If Sean Payton comes to the Arizona Cardinals, if Michael Bidwell gets this done, I will replace this bird with Michael Bidwell's head. Oh. I will get an overlarge head of Michael Bidwell for an indefinite amount of time because I will be that bullish on the owner because I'll be excited about him, Bo. And yeah, he will be strutting down Cardinal Way. He'll be waving all the people.
That's a better
in
place,
the traffic.
Cardinal
That's
Way.
Right.
There's
not much going on right there.
I don't know about that hashtag, Marley. We might have to. I was thinking about
that's a little aggressive.
Yeah, that's a little too maybe rated R for our taste. But as far as maybe like we want that, who that we want that.
I don't want any affiliation with the Saints in that.
Oh, come on. Well, you're gonna have to deal with the Saints.
We've also told you that we will live watch the Netflix movie starring Kevin James, the watch along. We will do a watch along if Sean Payton becomes the next head coach of the Arizona.
I can deal with that.
So many irons in the fire. It's exciting.
Yeah, it should be. It's an exciting time. And I've said this many times before. Arizona Cardinals fans deserve it. They deserve it. They've eaten too much crap over the years, and most recently a 4-13 season. You watched it play out, on the field. You watched it play out following us on PHNX Sports and watched us on a daily basis. And you watched it on Hard Knocks, and you'll watch it in the season finale. And tonight, that there was really nothing, no positives during the 2022 campaign and at the end of the 2021 campaign. But now, you've got some really good things going for this franchise. You got the 3rd overall pick. You've got cap space. You've got a quarterback that's on the mend from a surgery now that's becoming more and more routine. Yeah. And you've got yourself an opportunity to set up an interview with the top dog as far as the head coaching candidates go out there. I mean, listen to these things as far as Sean Payton. Over his last 5 seasons as the head coach of the New Orleans Saints, he averaged 11.6 wins per season on average, 5 seasons. He was winning. There was a stretch there where it was like they were a lock for, 13, 12 wins. His last season, he went 9-8, but he had to deal with pretty much Jameis Winston as his quarterback.
It was like a gadget quarterback situation.
Yeah,
it was a
he had Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. I mean, that's not getting it done for any head coach. But you got 11-5, 13-3, 13-3, 12-4, 9-8. during his time in New Orleans. He had the top 10 scoring offense, or he had a top 10 scoring offense in 12 of his 16 seasons. So,
just for giggles, I love this comment here, but we have to credit Mike for eating that Cliff contract. He wants to win, unlike his dad, and I think this is a very Michael move. I'm not here to knock Bill Bidwell, the late Bill Bidwell, but Bill Bidwell wasn't major players for head coaches. He locked Don Coryell out of his office once upon a time, told him to get out. His winningest coach in franchise history. Michael is very pro player and pro executive, maybe to a fault sometimes, as his relationship with Steve Keim has shown. But I have no concerns about Michael Bidwell meeting one-on-one with a Sean Payton. I think Michael will sell this fan base, will sell this franchise. I think Michael is an ambassador for Cardinal fans, hopefully in the best possible way. He's not Mark Davis. He doesn't look like a buffoon, right? He's got his shit together, right? He's in good shape now. He is an attorney. He's educated, right? He is a good ambassador for the Arizona Cardinals when they are humming. It's the people below him that sometimes he's a little too, connected to, a little bit too loyal, I guess is the word I was looking for, to enable them. I mean, Steve Keim was enabled for so long, 10 years. That's why I argue this is a great job. You get the right GM, they've got infinite job security.
Yeah.
This is the tweet that I want to pull up because I think if you're a Cardinal fan, you got to be so fired up to read this. This is from Tom Pelissero. So everybody's saying that Sean Payton, not interested, Kyler Murray, diva, whatever. Think again. Tom Pelissero stating, mentioned in his story with Rap Sheet, Ian Rappaport, friend of the program, that last week on looming changes with the Cardinals, that Sean Payton had been doing his homework on the Arizona Cardinals job. He's a Kyler Murray fan. No, he doesn't hate Kyler Murray. Turns out he's a fan. And with no GM in place, it'd be an opportunity to set up the entire operation. So Denver, your Broncos, Walmart, great value money. You can write the biggest check possible. You still have a lingering GM that hired Nathaniel Hackett that will be present next year, that traded for Russell Wilson. The Cardinals right now have no strings attached, Bo. They're the only team with a true head coach GM opening where Sean Payton could come right in and say, you can make Sean Payton like the co-team president if you wanted to. Michael, the titles are irrelevant because he will be the team president. Michael Bidwell is going to write fat checks because he's going to cash fat checks when you're averaging double-digit wins every year. Sean Payton will be in charge of the entire football operation should he get this job, and rightfully so.
Yeah, he doesn't wear a backpack. He doesn't cut his own hair like Arizona Animals saying like Mark Davis does. He's a
coach.
Yeah, he's a guy who was a former prosecutor. He's a very impressive guy, right? And unfortunately, he kept some company that didn't have him going in the right direction. But yeah, absolutely, it's a 10 out of 10 hire for our friends over at Cardinals Update. And now you've got the opportunity. And if Sean Payton, if it's on record that he likes Kyler Murray, when I look at these other vacancies, I haven't really heard what he said about Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson is public enemy number one right now in Denver. Yeah. And he's a very polarizing figure after, they thought that they were going to make their way through the AFC West and then be a contender for the Super Bowl where they could barely win football games with Russell Wilson. So, and the Houston doesn't even have a quarterback. So as far as the three teams attached to to getting permission from the Saints, only one of them has where Sean Payton's on record, and I would say multiple times from the pre-draft process to now, where he likes Kyler Murray. So as far as those who are Kyler haters and think that the Cardinals have made a mistake and that they need to move off of Kyler Murray, it's part of the things that's making the Cardinals appealing potentially to a guy like Sean Payton.
Drew Brees was damaged goods.
Yeah.
Could barely throw a football leaving the Chargers. He had to have shoulder surgery on his throwing arm to the point where Nick Saban and the Miami Dolphins medical staff failed his physical. He was damaged goods. He was a broken quarterback. He went to New Orleans and became an icon.
Kyler Murray's going to be better. 27 touchdown passes. He wasn't even close to the quarterback.
They were ready to move off of him. They said, "Come here, Phillip Rivers. You're coming in." And they had just been to the playoffs the year before. They were humming with Drew Brees. They'd never won in that ownership's history in recent memory. They cast him aside. Who does that sound like to you? Kyler Murray.
But I mean, relative to Kyler Murray, Drew Brees was an NFL quarterback afterthought. His career was on life support.
Correct.
And then he became at one point statistically the greatest quarterback ever.
Yes.
Statistically. As far as passing yards and TD. Yeah. It's unreal. And how tall is he? He's not your typical quarterback. He's under 6 feet. And
Kyler and he are about the same height.
They
They're
are.
about the
Yeah,
same
I
height.
mean, when I think their rookie season, they played the Saints in New Orleans, right? And they were head to head, and it was basically the same. And then Breeze signed with the Saints after Nick Saban. Great moves, Nick. Quickly went back to college football after that. He was 27 when he signed with the Saints. Kyler Murray will turn 26 this August. There's a lot of comps and a lot that people should be excited about.
Does anybody remember when Sean Payton was suspended for Bountygate? A lot of people want to bring up Bountygate. I get it. I think we're over it. I think Kurt Warner hopefully is over it. Yeah. I mean, but what happened after Bountygate? Sean Payton was suspended 2012, right? Drew Brees was on that team. You know what the record was that year? 7-9 with Drew Brees. No Sean Payton. Just saying. Like this notion that it's all Drew Brees and Sean Payton. No. Drew Brees was a big part of it. Sean Payton, though, that's the cake of this conversation. So anybody who doesn't think what Sean Payton can do with Jameis, think about what he can do with Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, who's not as mistake prone as Jameis Winston. Kyler Murray, who I believe will come back from this injury motivated because everybody is casting doubt. Everybody is writing him off. He sees all that garbage, gamer tag memes, everything. He will be installed now on how to win and compete and study like a winner because he's got one next to him now. And I always thought that was kind of the biggest indictment with Cliff Kingsbury. You needed a fortified leader of men to be able to embrace Kyler Murray. And when the Cardinals drafted Kyler Murray, they had Steve Keim, who a lot of people thought should not have been employed as the GM, and they had Cliff Kingsbury, and nobody liked that hire. We were on board with it because the offense was historically bad in 2018. Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury were friends. They were buddies. They had mutual respect, but it's not a Mike Tomlin, right? It's not a Pete Carroll. It's not a Kyle Shanahan. It's not a Sean McVay. You get him Sean Payton. He shows up to OTAs and training camp. I guarantee he's at everything. He's working his ass off because he has belief that this is going to succeed. Remember that clip, Bo, when he and Cliff were going at each other and he told Cliff to calm the F down. And they tried to laugh it off because what else can you do? You think that happens with Sean Payton? Kyler probably goes to the sideline and is like, my bad, coach. I know this was schemed up correctly. I got it next time. And they grow and develop together, and he will be held accountable. Because in that same Dan Graziano, Jeremy Fowler article, it was stated that right now there are leadership questions and work ethic questions about Kyler Murray. If Sean Payton's not the right guy to nip that in the bud, I don't know who is.
We need to make way for a third co-host on this site because I just saw our friend Cardinals Update, who's in the chat, just got retweeted by Rap Sheet, the video of Sean Payton talking about Kyler Murray.
Nice.
He tweeted it out and he's excited. I mean, Ian Rappaport, he hasn't been putting anything out about the Texans quarterback situation or anybody on that roster or anybody else as far as Russell Wilson. Like we haven't seen Sean Payton speak highly of Russell Wilson. I'll say that again. So
Russell Wilson's best football is behind him. Yeah. No one can dispute that. No one can.
Yeah. No,
they're just trying to salvage his career. I think Jim Harbaugh would be a perfect fit for them. I think most people in Denver feel that way. They just gave up a bunch of capital to get Russell. You're going to turn around and give up capital to give up Sean Payton. And speaking of draft capital, Bo, you were taking in a little New Orleans podcast here.
Yeah.
Tell the viewers what the people in New Orleans think they're potentially going to get for Sean Payton. And let's all have a good laugh.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Underhill, who's done a great job as far as kind of following this Sean Payton story so far. That started this season really. As he made it known that he wants to return. He had the inside scoop as far as what the Saints were going to do with Dennis Allen and that they weren't going to move off and make Dennis Allen one-on-one. Well, so many people were saying, well, you got to fire Dennis Allen. Have you seen him coach this year and what's happened to the Saints since? He said, no, that it sounds like he's going to stay, and he hasn't been fired yet. Doesn't look like he's going to be fired yet. But I was watching Nick Underhill's podcast, and they started talking compensation and what would you say? So they started talking floor. What should the absolute floor be for the New Orleans Saints when talking compensation for Sean Payton?
I would say, in my opinion, day 2 pick, some kind of day 2 pick.
Yeah, I mean, that's reasonable, right? I mean,
I'm a reasonable guy.
This was Nick Underhill. This was his floor. This is what he said the floor was: a first and some change. So first round pick and then some more draft capital on that. He said the Cardinals probably, he's like, yeah, I don't expect the Cardinals to give away the 3rd overall pick, but give us your 2nd round pick, a first next year, and a 2nd. That's his fucking floor.
Nick.
Of the floor, like the absolute lowest to start the conversation. Let's start there.
The Saints have no leverage. He has a TV job. He gets to pick his job.
They're not going to hold a head coach who helped revitalize a city after a natural disaster and take him to a Super Bowl for 16 seasons. They're not going to hold him hostage for the highest draft pick. It ain't happening.
We love the Cardinals. We will never be that blindly loyal to the Cardinals to the point where we will lie to you guys about realistic, we'll be objective here. We're objective on this podcast. That is ridiculous. I think the Cardinals probably undervalued Bruce Arians and gave him away for a ham sandwich. He goes on to win a Super Bowl. So maybe there's some, seller's remorse there, but man, no one's paying that. No one's paying that. You think the Chargers and the cheap ass Spanos family is going to give multiple picks, early picks, and trade away, draft capital and money, and they've got a GM in place. You think their GM who hits ace after ace after ace in the first round is going to do that? Who is their market? What do they think they're going after? Sean Payton is probably going to have 2 jobs that he likes, 2 jobs that he'll take. And if he doesn't get aligned with both jobs, then he's going to go back to TV. Benjamin Albright said there's a chance. Of course there's a chance. He's not going to these crap jobs. He's going to go to his perfect opening. Hopefully that's the Cardinals. And if the Saints don't play ball, say, fuck you guys. I'm going back to TV. I'll try again next year.
And if they do that, if it comes down to that and it plays out in the media like that, the Saints are going to eat it. I mean, they're just going to look awful.
Get destroyed.
They're going to look horrible. And if he's not coaching next year because of that, I mean, it's going to pummel their leverage and they're going to come out with nothing at the end of the day. And that's going to be on them. And that's going to be a colossal failure for their franchise. And in order to do, in doing that to the greatest coach in your franchise's history, who's going to go coach there?
No one wants that job.
You're stuck with Dennis Allen. You're stuck with probably, rolling the dice on coordinators. I mean, there's just no way. I think he's just misunderstanding and reading incorrectly who has the leverage here. And it's not the Saints.
You've got some leverage over the Game Time app. Not sure if you guys have heard about this, but right now on the Game Time app, you can save up to 60% on tickets when you buy them last minute. It's the best way to support us. Check out Game Time. Now that the Cardinal season is over, dabble on Suns tickets. We've got Diamondback games right around the corner, spring training games, beautiful places to watch spring training games here in the Valley. We've got concerts around the corner. If you want to get away from all of those egregious service fees on these third-party sites, check out the Game Time app right now. You will not be sorry that you did. Save up to 60% on tickets when you buy them last minute. Check out the link in the show notes for more information.
You want to come hit some bombs with us at Dobson Ranch Golf Course, hang out, drink some great Four Peaks beer, watch the Suns game as they take on the T-Wolves on Friday? You should. It's going down this Friday the 13th. A couple of days from now, it's going to be our PHNX Tea Party presented by Four Peaks. It's $36 a person. You can save some coin if you're a diehard. You get $120 for a foursome. You and the boys can go out there and crush some drives there in the bays at Dobson Ranch Golf Course, so you can hang out and you can play any of the other contests that we got going on. The longest drive, the putting challenges. We've got highest score. We got great food from Chop Shop, Mountain Mike's Pizza, and those beer samples from Four Peaks. Come join us. Johnny, myself, producer Emma, Johnny's whole family's going to be there. Me and my lovely wife and my son are going to be out there. We're going to be hanging out. We're going to be watching the Suns take on the T-Wolves. Thank you for Four Peaks for sponsoring this incredible event going on this Friday, PHNX Tea Party, Dobson Ranch Golf Course, Friday the 13th. Check the link in the description. Reserve your spot right now.
Can't wait for Four Peaks Dobson Ranch on Friday. I can't really wait for this coaching search and GM situation to kind of resolve itself. We've got questions abound. Who is going to be the next head coach and GM of the Arizona Cardinals? We know one candidate is out per numerous sources. Adam Peters is snubbing both the Cardinals and the Tennessee Titans. He's one of San Francisco's high-ranking executives, reports right to John Lynch, his right-hand man of sorts. he is opting to declining an interview with the Arizona Cardinals. It's being reported likes his job in San Francisco. There's some speculation maybe John Lynch at some point will step down. A lot of it has been made out that John Lynch, very much a figurehead, a face man, whereas Adam Peters is kind of the man behind the draft. So best of luck to Adam Peters. He will not be the next GM of the Arizona Cardinals. Will DeAndre Hopkins, Bo Brock, be a wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals much longer, as we got a cryptic Instagram post earlier today with speculation running rampant that D-Hop is going to probably be on his way out. At least that's what it would tell you.
Yeah, it would. Let's take a look at what D-Hop posted on his social media channels today. Oh, we don't have it. Okay. I mean, but basically it was D-Hop out there today saying grateful, right? Grateful.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't anything special.
No, nothing crazy. And, it might have been just another year in the league, or it might have, it just, the timing of it, obviously following the Jordan Schultz report yesterday, it just had people saying, okay, what's this about? Is this him kind of saying he's grateful for his time in the desert and he's ready to move on? He's, it's what we kind of discussed, and we're going to discuss here with Kyle Odegaard in a couple minutes. Is it more mutual than it's just what the report says, where it's Michael Bidwell telling potential GMs that this is something we want to do, that the Cardinals want to do. They want to shop D-Hop and plan on trading him this offseason. But it doesn't seem like, it's not like a Chandler Jones thing. It's not like a Patrick Peterson thing where there's really any ill will towards the Arizona Cardinals organization.
No, I mean, the Cardinals are just in a position where they have to keep every option open. We talked about that when the offseason began. Outside of trading, obviously, Kyler Murray, because you physically can, and I believe he's a big chip for getting people here, good people like Sean Payton and like a Budda Baker, like everything should be on the table. There should be no untouchables for the Arizona Cardinals. When you win 4 games, everything has to be on the table. You can't go into next year thinking without Kyler Murray to begin the season, you're going to be able to feed DeAndre Hopkins the ball. We don't know who the quarterback is to begin next season. We have no idea. Anybody that tells you is just guessing at this point. Anybody who says Colt McCoy would have to learn a whole new offense. I would imagine if it's Sean Payton, if it's somebody else, Ben Johnson, whomever, they're going to want their own guy to come in and at least try to stabilize the offense without Kyler Murray. I mean, go look at Jacoby Brissett with Amari Cooper this year. He was pretty good, but then he had an uptick in production when Deshaun Watson came back. I think there's a reason for Hopkins to stay if it forces the hand that nobody else is going to give you good compensation. So I'm not pulling a Nick Underhill here, Bo Brock, on this conversation, but I do feel like if teams, and I've said this numerous times, like if teams think that you're just going to play this as like Amari Cooper 2.0 and you're going to get rid of him for a ham sandwich, number one, the salary dump isn't there. You'd have to take on $22 million at dead camp. You have to be incentivized to trade DeAndre Hopkins. Teams better be courting Michael Bidwell and maybe Sean Payton and maybe Ian Cunningham, whomever's running this franchise. So I think it's in their best interest. Let teams call you, and it sounds like per Jordan Schultz's article yesterday, teams will be calling the Cardinals. They're going to check on his availability, and then you go from there. And if you say, okay, if you make a decision with your GM that you're going to go in a different direction, assuming that you like what you hear, you take the best offer. I don't think you have to worry about, we were getting these questions a lot yesterday, like, could you trade him in the NFC? Of course. He's 31 years old.
Yeah.
Don't be short-sighted. Think big picture.
Yeah, and there's an extreme possibility that in January next year that he's making big plays for another team. And you'd have to be okay with that, because I think there's some criteria, right? You're going to look for either a team in the similar situation that they were with Kyler Murray when they acquired DeAndre Hopkins, where they're trying to couple a young quarterback with a legit number 1 wide receiver, because DeAndre Hopkins still is that going into his age 31 season. Yeah. And you've got those contenders that were a wide receiver, an elite wide receiver away, from really making some noise. I think that I don't know if I'd be really shocked to see if New England really enters the mix, but a couple things at play, his no trade clause, obviously, but if he's, obviously being respectful of the Cardinals and he's asking for a trade and they're obliging, then he's going, when they find the deal, not to nix it because he's, something's not right about it for him, but he has that ability. He has that ability to trump this, whatever trade they throw his way.
Again, we talked about it yesterday. Any team that wants to acquire DeAndre Hopkins is going to pay him more money. Why would he say no to that? That money is probably not going to come from the Cardinals. And you think about any team that wants to acquire DeAndre Hopkins feels like they're a D-Hop away from contending, whether it's New England, whether it's the New York Giants, right? Whether it's, I don't know, all these other teams that could be in contention, the Bears, for instance. Like, these teams feel like we need a D-Hop. We need a D-Hop to push us over the top. We'll pay DeAndre Hopkins. You have to pay a premium for a talent like that, both in money and in assets to the team that you return him to. So this, I predict, we're going to make a lot of noise about this. This is going to take care of itself. Either people are going to pony up for a proven player with draft capital, or he's going to be an Arizona Cardinal. And I think, knowing what we know about D-Hop, I think nobody really takes the suspension seriously this year. You look at the course of his career and then the injury last year. I think most people are going to be like, what's a second-round pick for a team in contention? That's a flash in the pan. But for the Cardinals, if you're picking 60s, 70s, whatever, that's a starter for 4 years on cheap money for a new GM that can say, plug and play. Get me that center to replace Rodney Hudson, for crying out loud. Get me that cornerback that we need, the rotational depth. Get me a defensive lineman. We have none. I think those are all options for a quality GM to come in and look at. And I think for a lot of people out there, and we see this on our Twitter, Bo, and I understand where they're coming from. They don't want to trade D-Hop. It's too painful. And I get that. Bo put it beautifully on yesterday's show. This is not Larry Fitzgerald. This is not, he's going to, I don't think, play till he's 37, 38. That's an outlier scenario. Hop has, and I'm just guessing, probably 2 to 3 more peak years, right? So you're going to have to be able to be comfortable with him going and succeeding elsewhere. Have the big picture in mind that you can trade DeAndre Hopkins, I believe, next year or this year for next season and still be competitive and have a chance to make the playoffs. If things break right, hell, if you get Sean Payton and you trade D-Hop, you're telling me you still wouldn't have confidence that this team's going to score points? I would.
Yeah. And you also have the opportunity, if nothing comes to fruition, if nothing develops as far as his trade market, and I love Rafa's point about, as far as the free agent available wide receivers, if nothing develops as far as DeAndre Hopkins, and there's the post from his Instagram, forever grateful, standing in a Cardinals uniform. You have the ability between now and the NFL trade deadline, which is likely going to be early November of the 2023 season. You save yourself that dead cap money that you'd be charged for DeAndre Hopkins, and it goes from it goes down to almost 11.5 million. In 2023 from 22 million. So I think that the Arizona Cardinals could, sit on this for a while, just as they kind of get this new organization framework put in place.
Yeah. I mean, it's never a bad thing to keep your options open. You don't want to be a club that puts yourself it backs yourself up into a corner. I look at a little bit of what the Denver Broncos are going through right now. I mean, say what you want about Kyler Murray. He's not in his mid-30s, right? The Cardinals right now are not going to be in a position where they have to sell people on Steve Keim. Steve Keim is gone. Cliff Kingsbury are gone, right? Yeah. This is a clean palette for anybody. And I think most people would say, let me take a look at Kyler Murray. Let's go from there. Let's see how the next 18 to 24 months go. And I get it. People are saying, well, wouldn't a new GM want DeAndre Hopkins? Maybe. Or maybe they would want their own players. And that's okay, too. We got to be okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody can make the case for a future in near future 2023 season with DeAndre Hopkins, and you can certainly make the case against it. And I'm not trying to be political. I think he's just that good of a talent. And if the next head coach, next GM believe that, hey, we're going to be able to kind of turn this thing around quickly, and we don't need to use DeAndre Hopkins as one of those chips to create assets in order to do so. Let's keep him. Let's keep that wide receiver one. Let's finally see, what the dream was of DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, Kyler Murray playing on the field together, in more than just a criminal sample size that we saw this year.
What does Kyle Odegaard of Compare.bet think of the DeAndre Hopkins trade speculation? What would he ask for if he were the Arizona Cardinals? We're going to ask Kyle here momentarily. But I need you to check out GoPHNX.com, subscribe, become a diehard right now. Check out the fantastic work of our Arizona Cardinal, PHNX Cardinal beat reporter, Howard Balzer. 90% of the content is free. When it's not, slam that promo code Howard, HOWARD. Again, become a diehard, get 20% off our big event this coming Friday at Dobson Ranch, 4 Peaks and Company. You will not be sorry that you did. Pick up a free tee from the PHNX merchandise locker. Bo's rocking the Southwest Bias tee. We've got some phenomenal lids, some hats available, some pullovers. I still got to get me one of those. But regardless, you got to get all that and more at gophnx.com, Bo.
ogsbrands.com. That's maybe one of the things you can do to bargain with Sean Payton and say, hey, Arizona has one of the best cannabis kitchens in all of the 50 states in the United States. OG's Brands has something for everyone, including their CBD to THC happy balance ratio. And they've got it in some great flavors as well. Strawberries and cream. You can always find all of their great products in your local dispensary, but I highly encourage you to check out their website, ogsbrands.com. That's OGEEZbrands.com. You can check out what they've got available in indica and sativa. You've got the orange creamsicle, which early on we were talking about, but so many other flavors that you can't miss out on. Blackberries and cream, tropical, watermelon, raspberry. If you have trouble sleeping, they've got something for you as well. They've got the Sleep Time Gummy. It's the aquaberry flavor. It helps put you to sleep and keep you asleep. OG's Brands. Follow them on Instagram. Check them out online, ogsbrands.com. And as I said, find them in your local dispensary. Got to be 21 years or older.
If you're looking to pivot off year-long fantasy, and why wouldn't you be saddled with that sorry-ass team all year, pivot to Underdog Fantasy. It does daily fantasy sports differently ahead of the NFL playoffs. No better time to sign up. Draft your team against 5 of your buddies. The highest scoring squad wins that cold, hard cash for the evening. If you want to pivot from the NFL, you said, this isn't for me, NBA has got you covered. Draft 6 NBA players with no positional limits. All centers, you're good. Shooting guards, aplenty, and that is it. I've been using Underdog Fantasy ever since they became a partner of PHNX. I am never going back to year-long fantasy. I can't wait for you to get started. It is so easy. All you got to do, go to underdogfantasy.com, download the app, sign up with promo code PHNX, and guess what? Underdog is going to match your first deposit up to $100. So put in $100, boom, you get out $100. I got people asking me, what about 50? Boom, they're matching 50 as well. Perfect time for you to get started on daily fantasy is with Underdog Fantasy. Get in on the action today.
On here, PHNX Cardinals, excited to bring in our guy, of course, formerly of azcardinals.com, our guy Kyle Odegaard. Make sure you're following him on Twitter, checking out his stuff at compare.bet. Still, I mean, if you look at his timeline, Johnny, this guy's fully entrenched, using his sources, covering this Arizona Cardinals team. And Kyle, it feels like forever ago that was the Cliff Kingsbury era, but it was just like 48 hours plus ago. What were your thoughts on the Arizona Cardinals move off of Cliff and also say goodbye after 20 plus years to general manager Steve Keim?
I think it became evident that both needed to happen. I know it was a big talking point in the middle of the season when they were sitting there like 3-4, 3-5, like, okay, should they run it back? And then it all fell apart. There was off-field stuff, on-field stuff. Like, yeah, we needed a clean slate. They needed to go in a different direction. I'm not sure what the future is going to look like, but I definitely think it was the right decision, especially looking at the GM spot. Like the roster, the moves, they needed to change there for sure. And Cliff was maybe a little bit of collateral damage, but I understand why both moves were made.
So you saw, Kyle, the Monday press conference with Michael Bidwell, and I think he said all the right things that needed to be said. He was playful with the media, and he used the term casting a wide net. Yet there are some reports out there. They're going to consider that both the internal candidates, Adrian Wilson, Quentin Harris, and then, of course, the Vance Joseph lingering nightmare of him becoming the head coach. Do you think that's realistic, or do you think, like us, it's telegraphed by the team to kind of give the guys their due internally and hopefully look externally for the answers that plague this franchise?
Guess we'll find out, right, in a few weeks. But,
yeah.
I mean – yeah, you definitely want to interview those guys. You want to give them their chance. To me, it would be a little bit odd if you fire the GM and the coach and then you promote internally. And I wrote about this too. Like, then it says like you're trying to pinch pennies a little bit, maybe keeping these people on staff because you don't want to pay more contracts. So I think if it happens, the fan base would be livid. And I think Michael Bidwell is going to take that into consideration. Like, I think these last couple of days, he's built up some goodwill. People were wondering, would he fire those two after just extending him? He basically did with both. And the fact that people are excited about Sean Payton or different options. Like where they're at, people were negative and mad for a long time, but I think like there's some optimism right now. And if you bring in Vance Joseph and Quentin Harris or whoever it ends up, like people aren't going to be happy, and maybe they are qualified candidates and deserve a shot, but I just think the optics would be so bad. I don't think it should be an option.
Yeah, it'd be tough to spend to this fan base. It really would be, to say we're casting the net. He put the finger up. He said, well, as far as what I'm willing to do financially for this team is, get the best coach, best GM. I think a lot of people like the extensions for Cliff and Keim last offseason would be very skeptical that that's the best business move. Kyle, you were there the last time they made the coaching change, right? I mean, I think it was refreshing. I think he is creating a ton of goodwill. I've said it before. I think Michael Bidwell's getting his groove back, coming out of a little bit of a toxic relationship that he's been in for 20 plus years. Did you see, like, it did feel different. Like the last time we were there, it was Steve Wilks was fired, and there was almost a shot clock on the media availability. That press conference, we're taking responsibility for this, but we're only taking a few questions. Like this was different. This had a different feel to it. Do you think that that's something that he can continue to build off of?
Yeah, and I also like the way he's going about it. It kind of felt like when they fired Steve Wilks, they found Kingsbury for quite a while, and they obviously interviewed other people, but they locked in on Kingsbury pretty early and went that way. And I think that this is a better plan. Like, okay, obviously if you can get Sean Payton, lock in on him and get Sean Payton. But if not, like kind of go slowly and figure out, like literally, like actually interview these guys, see what people are going to say, listen to their ideas and do it that way. So I do think he's taking the right approach. And like we talked about, the fact that he did eat that money on those contract extensions, like you have to give him credit, because obviously I criticized him a lot. I'm sure you guys did, for those extensions and what it might mean if they were going to have to keep the coach and GM, even though they weren't performing, and he didn't keep them. So right now, Michael Bidwell, like you said, has got some goodwill for the stuff he's doing. And now, yeah, he's just got to keep it going and look at, different candidates and hire the right people and try to get this thing turned around, because obviously throughout the Arizona tenure, it hasn't been good, and really their whole franchise history hasn't been good. So they got to get something going consistent in the winning direction.
Kyle, I would imagine one of the best parts about your new role is you can be objective, voice your opinions in and out on Twitter, on the website that you work at Compare.bet. Let me ask you this, because there's been a lot of hyperbole surrounding this opening. And while we're objective on this show, we cover this team. We love this team. I think it's a good opening. You look at Steve Keim, got 10 years as the GM, multiple losing seasons. I think there's security with that. You look at the GM hirings, the openings in the NFL. This is really the only one, because if you go and you replace John Robinson in Tennessee, you're probably reporting to Mike Vrabel. This is the true lone GM opening, I think, in the NFL. And then I think this next head coach is going to get a mulligan year with 2023, depending on Kyler Murray's injury. Do you think this is a good opening GM and head coaching combination, and why?
Yeah, I think it is. And especially like you compare it to some of the other ones, Broncos, you could probably get more money and the ownership is very intriguing, but you look at the on-field product and you just shipped off a bunch of first-round picks. You've got Russell Wilson locked in. He's been terrible all season. He's making a bunch of money. He's older. Like Kyler Murray, to me, is clearly the best quarterback that among these openings. The Colts don't have one. The Panthers don't have one. Texans is intriguing because you can get Bryce Young or CJ Stroud maybe, but that team's been rebuilding for 3 or 4 years. So like, yeah, if you compare it to if a Chargers came open or a Cowboys came open, clearly those are better openings than this. But among the 5 right now, I put it near the top because you do have Kyler, you have a franchise quarterback still. And like you said, Johnny, like the guy who's coming in either as coach or GM, you're going to have a decent amount of power. And I think like from Michael Bidwell's position, he just has to make sure he trusts those guys and lets them be in a position to succeed, because if you're going to be meddling and wanting to do certain things, then it's going to be a negative for these coaches and GMs. I think if he can step back a little bit, let them do their jobs, to me, that would be the biggest thing as to why it would be attractive.
You've got a great article already up about, the odds for Sean Payton, where his next job are, and the Cardinals are the leader in the clubhouse. I don't think I'm like burying the lead there for you or revealing too much. Spoiler alert for Kyle's great article there. I still encourage you to check it out because everything you outline as far as the teams that would vie for him and the, obviously the context of that. But the Cardinals, I mean, let's continue to make the pitch. And if you're a Cardinals fan, like, how do you approach this? Like, how do you avoid heartbreak? How do you avoid, the Broncos or the Rams reaching into your chest cavity and pulling out your heart? I mean, what is it realistic to get excited about the potential of Sean Payton being the next Arizona Cardinals head coach?
Yeah, I think it definitely is. You can look at certain situations and there are pipe dreams in other situations, but that's why I like betting odds, because DraftKings is kind of putting their money on the line and saying, this is who we think is the favorite. If they didn't believe it and Sean Payton had really long odds and then he became the coach, a lot of people would have made a lot of money if they bet on him. So they feel like it's a legitimate chance. And I do too. Like, you talk about the GM situation, Johnny, and the fact that Sean Payton can come in here and have control of the personnel and he can be the coach who's got all this power. And I think that's attractive. A lot of it depends on what he thinks about Kyler, but from what I've heard in the past, he's been intrigued by Kyler. So, yeah, I think it's an option. And once again, if the Chargers comes open, if the Cowboys comes open, I don't think it's an option anymore. But as we stand, if Sean Payton wants to get back in this year, I feel like the Cardinals would be the number one spot as it stands right now.
Kyle, you've been a staunch supporter of Kyler Murray, the player. There was an ESPN kind of article today with Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano. I think there was a blurb in it, something to the effect of, the noise surrounding and the questions surrounding Kyler Murray's leadership have never been louder, and his work ethic as well. What do you say to something like that? Because we go into this offseason and injury be damned. We're assuming he's going to come back and be the player he was October moving forward. But do you think Kyler Murray is a deterrent for some of these candidates that are looking at this gig? Or like us, do you feel like it's something substantive of value when you consider how many quarterbacks just genuinely can't play the position high at the NFL level?
Yeah, I mean, he's probably a polarizing player, and some coaches might be looking at the situation and saying, I saw what went on the past year in Arizona, and there was some dysfunction, and maybe I don't want to touch it. But I think a lot of coaches would be intrigued by his skill set. And I feel like, the whole leadership thing we've talked about for the last several years, and he's been a Pro Bowl player and a guy that struggled, and he's the same personality. So I don't think his personality is going to affect wins and losses. He's not a rah-rah guy, obviously. He's not going to break down a huddle like J.J. Watt, but I don't think he's this super negative cancer that some people want to say he is. I think he's a quieter guy, and that's kind of just his personality. And you can't make somebody more charismatic. It's just your personality is who you are. So, and I look at it, if I'm a coach, I see the talent on the field and I want a part of that. I want that quarterback to be on my team rather than Sam Darnold or Sam Ellinger or whatever you're going to do with some of these other teams. I'd much rather take Kyler Murray and roll with that compared to some of these other options.
Now, how much do you make of Michael Bidwill saying that Kyler Murray is going to be part of this process in any capacity? I mean, Pat McAfee said yesterday off of Johnny's report that it's smart business. I tend to agree with him. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would do it. I mean, they're not saying Kyler is going to have to sign off on the coach or anything. It's okay, Kyler, what scheme do you feel most comfortable running? What kind of coach gets the most out of you? Do you like coaches that will coach you hard? Because a lot of players respond better to something like that, where you do have a coach that commands that respect and you're willing to play hard for him. So I think going to your most important player and getting his input, no brainer to me. You want to know what your quarterback thinks and what he wants. And if it doesn't line up with what you do, it's not the end of the world. But sure, what scheme do you think you can flourish in? Because if you get Kyler Murray flourishing again, then we're right back into the playoff conversation and maybe more. So, yeah, to me, I would do it 100% of the time.
Kyle, we led the show with the continuation of the DeAndre Hopkins saga. He posts this kind of cryptic Instagram of him saying that he's been grateful, and that would lead a lot of people to believe that DeAndre Hopkins, number 10, has played his last down, his last game for the Arizona Cardinals. What's your stance on trading DeAndre Hopkins given the Arizona Cardinals position, and what's a realistic return price?
There really is a lot of Cardinals news, isn't there? We're like rattling off all these cute D-Hop's like the fifth
Great,
thing we
isn't
talk
it?
about. I would not want to trade him. I've tweeted that out. When you take a $22.6 million dead cap hit, you only save $8 million, and you lose the most integral piece on offense besides Kyler. Like, I certainly wouldn't want to do it. And even if DeAndre's pushing for it, he's not at the age where he can like sit out a year. I think his base salary is something like $19 million. So if he says I want to be traded and you tell him no, I'm not sure what his recourse is besides making some noise publicly. But I certainly would keep him because I feel like if you look at the playoffs right now, Seahawks made it, Giants made it, Jaguars made it. Like, what were the expectations for those teams this season? Like, a lot of teams surprise every year. And if you can get Kyler Murray back and maybe he misses like 4 to 6 games if the rehab goes well, I'm not ready to punt on 2023 personally. So I feel like I would bring him back, try to get Hollywood Brown and DeAndre Hopkins on the field together finally with Kyler, with Rondale Moore, shore up that offensive line. I still think the offense can be good in a new system. So I wouldn't trade him, but if they do, and I think it's more likely than not they do at this point, I think late first, early second is probably the return. Like, he's 30 or 31.
Mm-hmm.
He's not cheap anymore. I mean, it's a decent contract for teams. He's probably worth 25 to 28 million, and his contract's around 19, I think. So it's a decent return, but I don't think you're getting 2 firsts. I think in that late first, early second range is my guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's refreshing to see, DeAndre tweet and post on social media compared to like the cryptic tweets you were getting from Chandler Jones and Patrick Peterson for so long that we're just kind of like, all right, this is probably bad. I kind of get the sense just off the report from Jordan Schultz, and that's really the only one out there as far as D-Hop's concerned, is like he wants another deal, right? He probably wants to strike one last time at his age in this league, and also that it's Bidwell telling potential GMs that. I found that kind of interesting. But I kind of get the sense that it's a mutual thing, right? Like, D-Hop probably wants to go, like JJ Watt says, maximize his NFL career as far as earning power and winning. We know he can earn here next season, but as far as winning, that's the biggest question mark. And maybe Bidwell's kind of doing him a service here. Don't you get that sense?
Yeah, it does kind of feel mutual, but I go back to, like, if I'm Arizona, my concern is my team, and it's nice to do people favors. And maybe if it's like Larry Fitzgerald, who played here all those years and wanted to go somewhere for 1 year, then you kind of let him go. But should they really have any allegiance to Hopkins, who's been here a few years? I mean, guys come in and out all the time, and I want to win. Like, and I think DeAndre Hopkins makes my team better. Like I said, I would do a hardline stance. If he wants to go, I would just say, sorry, you signed this contract. Like, I have a lot of sympathy for guys on their rookie contracts because it's slotted. They're not making their market value. But once you get to that second and third contract, you signed on the dotted line, and that was your choice, and you're making, $30 million, $25 million a year. So I would just say no if it were up to me, but I do think he's going to get traded.
Yeah, I mean, you give up a first-round pick for Hollywood Brown last year. You get a third in return. You would argue that trade has not worked out up until this point. They've just put so much emphasis on receivers from Rondale Moore, Andy Isabella, Christian Kirk. It almost feels like a new stance needs to be taken, and it's weird because it's like, well, let's trade our best one unequivocally in DeAndre Hopkins. But Kyle, I look at this team next year, and presumably no Kyler Murray until October. Who knows? With Kyler Murray's injury history, that could be longer. We really won't have a sense until the spring into the summer with where he's at. But you figure new coaching staff, fingers crossed in place, new offensive mind. It does feel like the Cardinals need to learn how to win in a different way. You look at other teams around the NFL, they don't have these superstar receiving cores. Hell, look at Baltimore. Look what the New York Giants have done this year. They have made it work through coaching, schematics, and then domination at the line of scrimmage. Doesn't it feel like the Cardinals need to kind of gut what they've known philosophically and say, okay, get back to basics this offseason and rebuild the offensive and defensive line?
Yeah, I think clearly their trenches are something that has hurt this team a lot. Like, I look at the Eagles, and they have high-priced, very talented receivers. And then, like, the Ravens, where those teams have this strong running game and they play the pass off of it a bit. And I think with Kyler's mobility, and we'll see what he looks like post-ACL, but being that dynamic of a runner. It never felt like Cliff used him in that capacity. It was more like this guy who threw a lot of quick passes. And I think a lot of quarterbacks could have played that role in Cliff's offense. And I'd rather maximize Kyler's strengths more, where you're using him with more runs, more running game stuff, where the play action is more effective, do some bootlegs, take advantage of his deep ball ability. So I do think, like, number one is, getting a better offensive line, get him protected and running the ball better, because if you run the ball well, like in Philly, Jalen Hurts can be a very good passer, and Jalen Hurts is in the MVP conversation. You go back to college, like, Kyler was clearly a better quarterback than Jalen in college. So to me, I feel like Kyler can be that if you have the right pieces, if you have the right philosophy. So I agree. Like, I think they definitely need to get that offensive line fixed. To me, that's the big thing. And then D-line, like, without JJ Watt now, you're in a lot of trouble. Luckily, you'll get one of those big dogs in the draft early on, but they still need more help on the D-line.
When do you start kind of getting those odds going as far as, likelihood as far as top pick, second pick? I mean, I don't know what compared Bet has, but I saw that the Bears were overwhelming favorites to trade out of number one. You would assume that's to a QB hungry team. Houston's probably a lock to go quarterback. So the Cardinals could potentially at 3, if they stick and pick, could get the best non-quarterback available.
Yeah, I think it's clear they're going to get Will Anderson or Jalen Carter if they want them. If one of those two goes top 2, the other one will be sitting there, but you could also trade down if CJ Stroud is still there and the team wants them. Like, the Colts are sitting there a couple of picks behind you and they need a quarterback. So it's interesting. Like, we go back to the D-Hop thing, and if you're going to rebuild, I say tear this thing down and rebuild. Like, trade DJ Humphries along with Hop, because Josh Jones can play left tackle. I don't think there's a market for James Conner and Zach Ertz, but if there is, and you can save some money, trade them. Like, if I'm rebuilding, I'm stripping it down and then maybe trade down and get more picks and just redo it all. I wouldn't do any half measures. Either I'm coming back with D-Hop and I'm going for it in 2023, or I'm not. So we'll see what they do. But that draft pick's going to be intriguing for sure.
So you brought up a good point. This will be my last question, Kyle, because I think it's worth asking. We want things to work out with Kyler Murray long term. I think it's in the best interest of the franchise. But it does kind of get the sense that maybe, unless they go Vance, Quentin Harris, Adrian Wilson combination, that the next GM and head coach will attempt to make it work with Kyler. But you would assume their shelf life, given that Kyler's supporters and Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim are gone, that their shelf life would potentially be longer, especially when you consider that it was Michael Bidwell, presumably, who put that clause in Kyler's contract. It does feel like Kyler's under the microscope now because of a lot of his supporters internally are no longer with the franchise.
Yeah, I think having that contract makes it a little bit different, especially if he didn't sign an extension. I think all eyes would be on it. I think the fact that he's making all that money and it doesn't really kick in totally until 2024, like, it's complicated to trade him. You could do it, obviously, but you're hamstringing your franchise a bit for a year or two. And I mean, clearly they went all in with Kyler and Cliff and Steve. So the new regime is going to like Kyler, but if it doesn't work, then maybe something changes. But I do think, like, seeing the talent of Kyler Murray, I expect him to be in Arizona for a long time. I think with a different system, I think they can make it work. And this team can get back to the way they were playing, because it's such like a narrow focus. And we look at this 4th season, but the first 3 of him were really, really good and, like, really, really promising for a young guy who did a lot of really intriguing stuff. So I just think, like, I think he's going to turn it around, and we'll see if the injury affects it. But I do think maybe bringing in a new staff, new GM, people that are interested in Kyler Murray, because you have to be if you're going to take the job. I don't think it's going to be too short of a marriage. I still feel like clearly Kyler's your guy for the foreseeable future.
Incredible stuff from Kyle Odegard. It's refreshing to catch up with you. You're doing great work over there, Compare.bet. I highly encourage everybody to check it out. Sean Payton, you've got, your timeline, as I said, littered with it, including interviews with Colin Cowherd, and we're going to continue to lead that charge, and we're glad that you're a part of it, and we're glad that you could join us here on the show today. That's not only going to wrap it up for Kyle, Johnny, that's going to wrap it up for us.
Yes, sir. Be sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star wherever you get your podcast. We are back later tonight with the season finale Hard Knocks post-game show. Will we see Cliff Kingsbury say goodbye to the Cardinals on air, or will it be scrapped for a J.J. Watt love fest? Be sure to tune in 9 p.m. Cards, Hard Knocks, After Dark. For Bo Brock, Kyle Odegaard, I'm Johnny Venerable. We'll see you soon.